So here's something interesting. After a 10-hour flight from OR Tambo in Johannesburg, we connected in Sao Paulo to here in Goiânia, Brazil. When I was crossing immigration coming into Brazil, I didn't have much problems. I didn't have issues actually. And the lady was smiling when she stamped my passport. Now, that might sound a little bit random, but there's something in that. There's something very nuanced in the ease of access that I had. This little green book has a way of telling you how your country is perceived from region to region, continent to continent, country to country. This little green book, a South African passport, which is the third most powerful passport in Africa behind the smaller nations of the Seychelles and Mauritius. But there's a lot behind the power of this and the ranking of this passport. So that's what I want to talk about. The power of the South African passport, its importance when it comes to true freedom of movement for South Africans, but also its limitations. The limitations created by many things. Things that we have control over as a country, and some other things that aren't by our doing, but things that we can look to change. Now, there's something very official about a passport. It's on a president to president agreement. And this book says that the bearer should be treated with care and respect and should be allowed entry and protection. It sounds very 18th century, but it's very important. Possession of a passport means that you are a law abiding citizen, a person who carries themselves well enough in the receiving country and basically won't cause problems because you don't cause problems back home. A passport is a gateway to the world. That's why when you do something terrible and get a criminal record, it's harder for you to obtain one of these, right? Let alone a visa. Now, with South Africa being a developing country, our passport, at least to me, becomes more than just a travel document. Your passport, our passport, defines our financial freedom, its possibilities, because it links directly to our ability to access international investments and even business opportunities. The way I've always seen it, though, is that the freedom of movement for people, when combined with trade for possibilities, is how South Africa is going to find its prospects and nurture prospects for growth. More of our people need to be able to move around in order for us to open more opportunities for where we come from. But our passport currently doesn't offer as much as we would want it to when it comes to things like economic possibility. Take, for instance, the Henley Passport Score. This newly developed term or ranking now indicates the percentage of visa-free access to global GDP that each country's passport provides to its holders. Basically, where can you go to buy, sell, and trade your skills, goods, and services? And what emerges from this ranking is an unequivocal link between passport strength and the true economic power of a nation. So, the research shows that there is a close correlation between passport power and wealth. People in richer countries experience open borders or visa free access as a traveling asset. It's an asset to them, much more than those in developing or even middle income countries. The Henley Passport Index metric combines the world's GDP data and also ranks all 199 passports according to their power and also their access. Myself, as a passport holder of Africa's wealthiest country, South Africa, I have access to almost half of the world's 227 destinations visa free. While this sounds reasonable when you hear it, a better measure of economic mobility for investors, business people, and just tourists alike, it lies in their access to the world's economic output. The 106 or 47% of the world's destinations that South Africans can access without a prior visa account for about 15% of the world's GDP, presenting a rather very poor economic power for investors residing in South Africa. In contrast, despite its small population size and ranking as the sixth wealthiest country in Africa, Mauritius has access to 146 countries, 64.7% of the world. This is what their passport affords them. This gives them access to 57.3% of the world's GDP. This is especially significant considering that Mauritius contributes a mere 0.01% of the global GDP, while South Africa contributes considerably more at 0.45% of the world's GDP. Regarding other African countries, Egypt can access just 53 countries visa-free, representing nearly a quarter of the globe, but they only have access to a mere 4% of global GDP, while the 46 destinations that Nigerians can travel to without needing a visa represent 20% of the destinations worldwide. But they only even account for around 2% of the global GDP. The Henley report shows that when it comes to visa-free access to global economic output, the citizens of African countries and other developing nations with sizable and growing private wealth are at a stark disadvantage. But there's a new trend that's emerged where a lot of wealthier South Africans are seeking dual citizenship as a way to get around a lot of the restrictions that our passport gives them. The Henley and Partners data shows that South Africans are among the top 10 nations whose people seek a different passport through residency and citizenship by investment. We actually ranked number 8. That's interesting because the US and UK citizens ranked higher than us. Its citizens want dual citizenship more than anyone else, and so did the people from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Russia, and even India. There's obviously a reverse effect that happens here. People from first world countries are looking to capitalize on their money being able to buy more in developing nations, and people from middle income and low income nations are looking to earn in currencies that buy more. And many are also running away from their country's hardships and troubles. Geopolitical standing is also an important factor. This helps South Africa quite a bit. Even though we have a fragile ranking, it's still going up. For example, more than 80% of visa applications by Iranians were rejected in 2020. In contrast, less than 20% of visa applications by Turkish nationals were rejected, even though the two countries score similarly on the fragility index. Likewise, Cubans' visa applications were 8 times more likely to be rejected than South Africans, even though South Africa is ranked as being more fragile. This indicates that in addition to just considerations about fragility, geopolitics may play a role in determining travel freedom for individuals around the world. So, what are the things that affect the power of a particular passport? There are 5 key points. There's a whole lot more, but I'll just mention these ones: diplomatic relations, sovereign policies, political and economic stability, global reputation and influence, as well as a country's passport security measures. Let's start with diplomacy. If two countries aren't getting along or their ties are strained, the likely result will be a negative for passport access. Improved diplomatic relations between countries can, however, improve travel access and as well as a country's overall passport ranking. Tougher rules between countries or even security measures may result in a drop in passport ranking. Political and economic stability also greatly affects a nation's passport score. Better circumstances in a country usually translate into a higher ranking. Some of the intangibles, like reputation and influence, can help or even hamper how powerful a country's passport can be. Global image and even influence in business, culture, or tourism can also positively affect and impact the passport ranking power, while a decline in reputation may result in a decrease in all of these. Passport security measures also play a role in how your country's passport is seen globally. Strengthened security protocols in a country's passport's issuance system, how they basically give out passports, can help to enhance its regional and global trust. And this can also result in recognition from other nations, thereby boosting its passport ranking. Now, all of these things have a way of working together. No one thing can work alone to up or down a passport's power. A passport is more than a passport, especially when you're African. South Africa and Africa's passport power intertwines so deeply with its economic potential. It shapes our investment landscape and even our business opportunities. As the concept of investment migration gains traction, as more African entrepreneurs seek avenues to navigate regulatory complexities and even gain access to markets, global markets, the constraints on African passports contributes to a perpetuation of economic inequality. Economic inequality that affects the entire continent. But I feel like the people in global centers of power know this. This is the thing that people know. They know about this. Those with the means to acquire alternative citizenship or even residence in more economically favorable countries can and do bypass these restrictions, thus widening the gap between the wealthy elite and the majority of citizens who are bound by how far their passports can actually go. This current state of affairs will inevitably exacerbate the existing disparities. It will also stifle efforts to promote more inclusive economic development across Africa. But alas, I am but a mere humble South African who doesn't have the power to change a lot of these things. But I always dream and hope that those who do have the power are thinking of ways to change this for us. Because I mean, the blue and the red passports give them access to things that we don't have. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. I hope that if you've got another minute, you will check out one of these other videos, and maybe they'll be just as interesting as this one, because you got to the end, didn't you? I'll see you in the next one. Cheers from Brazil.